It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the first annual general meeting of the Canadian Business History Association, l'Association canadienne pour l'histoire des affaires. My name is Professor Dimitri Anastakis, and I have the pleasure of acting as both one of the founders of this organization and the chair of the steering committee from the time of its creation until the first annual general meeting. I got to say, it's great to be able to be part of building something from the ground up, and it's been a great experience, and this meeting is just the start of more good things to come. On today's agenda, we have two key items that we want to do. We have one set of formal business items to attend to, all of which is part of the business of setting up the governance structure of the organization, reporting on its membership since its inception, and report on the financial condition of the organization also since its inception. After we get through some of these more formal aspects of the meeting, we're going to have a short break, and then we'll reconvene in this room, where we'll have the pleasure of listening from three panels of experts in the area of business history and Canadian business history and archives management. So the first thing we need to do is pay attention to the formal business items that must be dealt with at an annual general meeting. And in doing so, I call upon the Interim Secretary-Treasurer of the CBHA, the ACHA, Mr. Mark Bonham, to provide his report on the requirement that proper notice has been given to the members and a necessary quorum is present to conduct the business of the meeting.
As Interim Secretary-Treasurer of the CBHA, ACHA, I hereby confirm that the proper of this meeting, pursuant to Bylaw Number 1, Section 10.04, being 21 days notice, has been provided to all members. I also hereby confirm that the form of notice, pursuant to Bylaw Number 1, Section 12, has also been met. I also confirm that the requirement under Bylaw Number 1, Section 10.01, that an annual general meeting be held not later than 18 months after the initial incorporation of the organization has now been met by the conducting of this meeting. I also confirm that, pursuant to Bylaw Number 1, Section 10.10, a quorum is present at this meeting in person or by proxy to properly conduct the affairs of the meeting, and that the meeting may proceed.
Thank you, Mark. That's great. I would now like to introduce the principal individual who undertook to found the CBHA, the ACHA, to address the audience and provide some comments on this historic first meeting. And I'd like to introduce Professor Chris Cobra.
Okay, may I stand up for this?
Yes, you may stand. You can come over here if you wish. Just by way of introduction, if you don't know him, Professor Chris Cobra is the Wilson Curry Chair of Canadian Business and Financial History here at the Rotman School of Management, and is a Professor Emeritus of Finance at ESCP Europe in Paris. His research interests are in the history of foreign investment, financial services, regulation, corporate governance, and political risk. I'll turn it over to Chris to say a few words.
Okay, thank you very much, Dimitri. I can't tell you how much pleasure this gives me to be here. This organization really belongs to my heart and soul. I am so happy that it has gotten started. I'm very proud of my involvement in it, but I want to say that it really was a team effort, and one of the great pleasures I've had in my life working with this team. A bunch of people who really were committed to the idea and extraordinarily competent and creative. The idea was very simple. The idea came out of my first involvement in business history, a little over 20 years ago. And it's this, that we who are doing history, who are interested in history, are interested in one of the most important sources of human knowledge, the study of past. And we're also interested in an organization, institutions, that are probably the most important institutional organization of the modern world. And from the very beginning, it seemed to me that it wasn't getting enough attention. And every year that I'm involved in this, I see that given those two criteria, those two aspects of business history, that how odd it is that it isn't getting more attention among academics, among the business community, among the population in general. And my feeling was two things. The first is, probably several headwinds, but two remedies for that. Organization, And I turned for the model to this. So you're going to hear a lot from Andrea Schneider later on, the head of the Gesellschaft für Unternehmensgeschichte. The business historians, archivists, business people, if they want business history to be important, they have to work together and they have to organize. And most places where business history is done well, they organize. And the second thing is that it's a national undertaking. These organizations, once they're great communities, international communities of business historians, but the links between archivists, historians, other people studying the corporation, and the business community, virtually all of those are done well on a national level. And when I came here 3 years ago to Canada, took on the honor to have this position at Rotman, it seemed to me if we were going to develop business history in Canada, we needed to have an organization like the Gesellschaft für Unternehmensgeschichte, and I think we've made such giant steps, and it's such a great group of people who've been involved in this. I thank them all for what has been, for me, one of the most satisfying experiences of my life, the creation of this organization. And welcome, please, to this our first AGM. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That's wonderful. I must say, just from a personal experience, this has been, again, to echo Chris's comments, a great learning experience, a building experience, and it has been part of a great team. It's now time to consider our first motion for the meeting, the election of directors of the CBHA, ACHA. Under the bylaws of the corporation, directors are elected to 3-year rotating terms. As such, in this first annual meeting of shareholders, there are a set of directors to be elected with 1-year term, a set of directors to be elected with a 2-year term, and a set of directors to be elected with a 3-year term. This is the motion that is being put forward to the meeting. The following directors be elected to a 1-year term: Mr. Mark S. Bonham, Professor Chris Cobra, and Mr. M. Stephen Salmon. The following directors be elected to a 2-year term: Professor Joe Martin, Mr. J. Andrew Ross, and the following directors be elected to a 3-year term: Mrs. Amy Korchinski, Miss Amy Korchinski, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Doctor, I don't know, sorry. That is a really bad mistake on my part, and I do apologize, Amy. Professor Dimitri Anastakis and Professor Janice Thiessen. The biographies of these individuals were provided in the meeting material forward to all members with the notice of this meeting. May I ask one member to move that this motion be presented? And I'm sorry, sir, you are Scott Cameron. Is there a seconder for Brian Silverman? Okay. Are there any discussions or questions on the motion? There are not. Therefore, I will call a vote on the motion. Those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Abstaining? The motion passes unanimously. We now turn our attention to the financial affairs of the CBHA, ACHA, since its inception. For this, I will ask the Secretary-Treasurer of this organization, Mr. Mark Bonham, to provide his report. Mark, you can do so from there if you wish.
Thank you, Dimitri. In reviewing the financial statements of the CBHA at this time, please remember that these are 6-month unaudited reports to March 31st, 2016. We were incorporated almost exactly 7 months ago, so that's why it's a 6-month report. Of course, audited financials will be prepared once we have 12 months under our belt. At this time, the primary revenues relate solely to membership fees. As of March 31st, these membership fees totaled approximately $31,000, as you can see. Subsequent to March 31st, additional members have joined the organization, and fees as of today are approximately $55,000. So we are growing very, very quickly. Expenses of the organization to March 31st can be broken down into 3 principal areas. The organizational expenses incurred to get the CBHA up and running, ongoing operational and office expenses, and grants, scholarships, and awards to members. In the first category, the principal expenses were related to creating and launching the organization's website and the legal incorporation of the entity. These organizational expenses totaled approximately $4,000. Office and operating expenses for the first 6 months totaled approximately $2,400. In the first 6 months, the organization created a scholarships and awards committee from the interim steering committee. This committee drafted a set of criteria for the awarding of research grants, travel grants, and other scholarship grants to members, including an appropriate application form and a review procedure. As a result of this, to March 31st, a total of 6 grants have been awarded to members for a sum total of $3,000. Subsequent to March 31st, an additional 4 grant applications have been received, of which 2 have been approved and 2 are under review. This, of course, leaves the organization with a very healthy deposit balance to consider additional grants and programs for the future. Some considerations under review and discussion by the interim committee include an annual book award, a research fellowship, research article and MA thesis awards, and so on. Of course, any suggestions by members would be very welcome on these topics, and more information on all of these initiatives will be forthcoming in the future via our website, by our newsletter, and so on. We strongly encourage that all members partake in this and consider applying for any research grants you need or travel grants. That, of course, is one of the primary purposes of this organization, is to subsidize the study of Canadian business history. If there are any questions on the financials, I'd be very pleased to take them and answer them. It's fairly straightforward so far.
Any questions for Mark? Okay, thank you, Mark. I would now, as your past interim chair of the steering committee and now a formal member of the board member, present to you a report on membership. And before I do so, I would like to publicly point out the work that's been done by 2 of our steering members, Professor Joe Martin and Mark Bonham have done incredible work in terms of building the base, both on the corporate sponsorship side, but on individual members and recruiting people to join the organization. And without their work, we would not be where we are today, even in this early part of the organization. So far, in terms of our membership, we have 6 charter large corporate members. We have a category of large corporate members. In order of joining, that includes the TD Financial Group, Scotiabank, the Great West Life Assurance Company, the Canada Life Assurance Company, London Life Assurance Company, and CIBC, which is a kind of all-star team in many ways of many of the leading financial corporations in our country. We also have 2 small corporation members in order of joining, Heathbridge Capital Management and Cameron Stevens Mortgage Capital Incorporated. In terms of individual members, I am pleased to report that we have a total of approximately 56 or 57, we just got 2 more members today who joined up, individual members of the CBHA, ACHA, and this includes a mix of academics at a varying range of career points, including senior scholars, right all the way down to graduate students. We have archivists, corporate executives, and other young scholars, including some people from the general public. It also gives me great pleasure to report that the Hudson's Bay History Foundation has just informed us of their membership. This is an important member institution for an organization like the CBHA, so we're very pleased to have them. The paperwork is just being submitted, and once received, the Hudson's Bay History Foundation will indeed be formal members. Again, this is particularly important to us because it broadens what we're doing in terms of our corporate membership, and the Hudson's Bay Company, as all of you know, is such a central entity in terms of Canada's business and economic history. I'd also like to make a few general comments about membership and what we have planned for the organization over the coming year and years indeed. Well, some of you will be aware that we do have a conference this week that's being sponsored by the Leverhulme Trust that is being held here at Rotman, which the CBHA is taking a role in. We're going to be doing more conferences in the future, conferences and workshops as part of our outreach. We'll be involved in, for instance, the Canadian Historical Association, which is coming up in May and June of this year, where the CBHA has already sponsored sessions and roundtables in an effort to try to bring more business historians out of the woodwork and into the public eye, particularly in the historical profession. Our outreach efforts includes not just the website and our bulletin, but also word of mouth in terms of spreading the word about the CBHA, getting younger students involved, talking to scholars across the country to make sure that the CBHA as a new entity that's just emerging is well known. Other initiatives, which include some of the things that Mark mentioned, include a postdoctoral fellowship, which is in the works and will be presented this year. We're going to be funding students, postdoctoral students' work in particular areas of Canadian business history. And I must say this is a pretty exciting initiative because it's one of the very few non-academic postdoctoral fellowships probably in existence in Canada, which is going to be organized by this entity. We'll also be, as Mark mentioned, presenting a book award and article awards, which will come with awards, a cash prize, which is still being worked out. But this is another important initiative for us to develop and build on, in terms of our outreach of spreading the word of business history in Canada. We also have plans coming up for 2017. As many of you know, 2017 is the sesquicentennial of Confederation, and we've been working in conjunction with the CHA, which is the Canadian Historical Association, to develop some cooperation in terms of presenting some stuff at the CHA, which will be held. The Canadian Historical Association's annual meeting will be held at Ryerson in 2017 here in the city of Toronto. So we're working on having perhaps a separate entity at Ryerson of a part of that conference, or certainly doing some sort of high-profile event which will accentuate and focus on the role that business has played in terms of the creation of Canada, and an opportunity to talk about the development of business history in the last 150 years since the sesquicentennial. We've also got, in terms of some of the membership and in terms of growth, we've had a very good success in terms of our grants. So far this year, we've been able to support 6 individuals going to various conferences and events around the world, including the CHA in Calgary, but also at the Business History Conference, which was held in Portland this year, the European Business History Association meeting, which was held in Bergen this year in Norway. In August, will be held. So there's some good work that we're doing in terms of supporting young scholars, supporting scholars who are interested in working on Canadian and other business history. So I would now like to open the floor to any general questions or comments from members present at our first annual general meeting. If anybody has any questions, comments they'd like to make about what we've presented so far, we welcome them. Okay, great. With that, I would like to conclude the formal business matters of the first annual general meeting of the CBHA. We'll now take a short 15-minute break, a comfort break, after which we will be excited to hear from 3 experts in the field of corporate business history and archival management.